Welcome to the show, The Debate. I'm your host, Sanam Apool, once again here with you at B2B World, bringing you different stories from around the world and also within Pakistan, trying to give you perspectives from all angles, and of course, including in our show, analysts, experts, and of course, people who will give you a take that you may not be able to hear anywhere else. In today's show, we will be talking about two very important issues. The first one, of course, is the joint session of the opposition, which was convened by the Permanent President Shehbaz Sharif, also joined by Bilawal Bhutto, Zardari, and of course what the opposition is claiming regarding them devising a strategy in order to defeat the government and not letting the government be successful in passing a number of bills. Of course, a lot of these questions need to be addressed in terms of what exactly is the kind of strategy the opposition may be employing towards. Does the government really have hindrances in the way of passing some of the bills? We have seen earlier trouble in the National Assembly regarding some of the bills, and we're going to try and understand the way forward in terms of the joint session. What sort of probabilities or chances does the government hold in this regard? And then, of course, the opposition strategy in this way as to what is it doing? Is there really a specific argument that they have against the bills, or is it just another effort to malign the government and create hindrances in the way of progress? We'll also be looking at the situation in Kashmir. Unfortunately, a never-ending struggle of the Kashmiris. It has been many, many decades that the Kashmiris are suffering at the hands of the Indian forces. And now even more troops have been added to the already militarized zone, and the Kashmir Valley and the people are suffering at the hands of the regime. About 2,500 soldiers have already arrived. More are expected. In total of 5,000 additional troops are expected in the Indian-controlled Kashmir. And of course, this points towards the fact that more and more militarization of Kashmir. How is this going to turn about? What is going to be the end game for Kashmir? What is India planning to do in terms of bringing civilian life to such a trouble by bringing in more and more forces in the area? And what needs to be done regarding that? Pakistan's stance continues to be very clear, but what more can we do, as well as the international community? Would explore that in further detail in the show today, of course, with our experts and guests on the show. Now, of course, starting off with the first topic that we have today, but before that, let me welcome in our show, of course, Farooq Batafi and Raja Faisal, regular analysts on the show. Thank you very much for being with us once again.
Thank you.
And today we've also been joined by another very special guest on the show. She has been an anchor at BTV World for quite some time now, and she's also an analyst. She has an opinion on different matters and holds quite a few ground on different aspects and angles of stories, and we're going to be listening to her expert opinion as well. I'd also like to welcome to the show Ms. Marukh Hamid, and she will be talking to us regarding the situation, of course, with the opposition and the government strategy. Thank you, Marukh, for being a part of the show. Now, starting off, of course, with a joint session of the opposition, and then, of course, a joint session of the parliament, which is going to be convened tomorrow. Before I move on to discussing the strategy employed by the opposition or what lies ahead, Farooq, why don't you give us an overview regarding the bills that are treated as the most controversial or problematic, what has happened in the recent past regarding those bills in the National Assembly and the Senate?
Right. It is very important to remember that the government wants to bring in many changes. One is regarding electoral reforms. That is very important because you must be listening to the Prime Minister of Pakistan and the government officials repeatedly talking about the need to modernize our electoral system. In the past, there were speculations and protests regarding the way elections took place. Of course, it includes EVMs, electronic voting machines, and then the issue of Pakistanis abroad, because that is very important. It is also important to remember that the government wants to bring about changes into NAB law. It brought NAB law changes through ordinances, but eventually it has to land in the parliament, right? And then, of course, there's the issue of media reforms as well. There are umpteen important changes that the government wants to bring, and the government kept on doing it. It has tried in the past as well, and repeatedly we have seen that the opposition proved that it wanted a gridlocked parliament, and that has been going on for quite some time. But in coming days, it seems that the opposition thinks that the government is playing on a weak wicket. Sadly, when you talk about our media and our punditry and opposition, and they have the worst instincts of the century. So they keep on misreading a lot of things that might be there. For example, if you are following the Pakistani media's punditry, they keep on implying that there might be some concerns about civil-military relations, and that's where things are going to change. But in actuality, what is happening is whenever there is some economic distress or there is some problem or concern regarding that, and we have been talking about that for quite some time, at that time, every element in the parliament tries to extract as much concessions as possible. That is happening from the government allied side as well, and that is happening from the opposition side as well. So the media, the punditry keep on misreading it. In coming days, what is going to happen, we are going to talk about that later when you come back to me. But you asked for an overview. These are the overviews.
Marukh, considering the options that the opposition has with regards to what they've been claiming that their strategy is in place to defeat the government, and of course the fact that the PTI has a thin majority in the joint session, what do you think really is at stake over here, and what is the option that the opposition can actually employ in terms of defeating the government in its path towards passing these bills? We have the joint session tomorrow. Do you not think that it's completely simple for the government to be able to be successful?
It has been called off, by the way.
Marukh?
And Gee, can you hear me?
Yes.
Gee, there are reports that is saying that the joint session has been called off, and again speculations of why that's happened. But regardless, what I would like to say is that time and again, I feel that whether it's the opposition or the government, the role that they have to play as far as a responsible opposition is concerned with regard to effective legislation has been missing from the point go. And we can criticize the government, and the opposition can criticize it, or we can have a number of opinions on that. But the point is that when we need input or credible input, we need the opposition to step up. Unfortunately, that hasn't really happened. Whatever the case may be, whatever the cause may be, we haven't seen that happen. Instead of employing tactics like opposition, leaving the assembly or marching out, all of those things, instead of actually, giving credible alternatives to whatever the government is talking about. So my take is that, for whatever reason the session tomorrow is not happening, the real issue with regard to this, government, with regard to democracy, with regard to reform is that we haven't seen that kind of input come out of even the opposition. So the criticism, when it has to be leveled, has to be seen with regard to, not, we can't just criticize the government. It has to be seen what the opposition has and has not done, with whatever role that they should have had in the last 3.5 years.
Right. So what does the opposition really intend to do in this regard, considering that they're saying that they're going to they have a strategy in place to making sure that they defeat the government in the parliament? What options are we looking at?
Well, I think the opposition, of course, it's a number game, and there are allies. And the question of whether the allies will stand with the government, the opposition is trying to insinuate that there may be other things at play here. But whatever happens still remains to be seen. And a lot of, these things are today, at this time, speculations.
Right. Faisal, considering this, and of course the fact that there are a number of bills that we've talked about before as well, specifically with regards to the NAB ordinance as well, and then we have other bills that were not passed in the Senate regarding the use of EVMs or the right of vote for overseas Pakistanis and such, and there's so many of them that the opposition is trying to create hindrances in. What do you think that the government is intending to do in terms of, if we look at each of these bills in line, what sort of a trouble do you think is caused by one of the bills? What is the most problematic at the moment?
Accountability, Sana, I would say. One thing we need to always remember that this current government is of Prime Minister Imran Khan's party, PTI, that has always advocated that whenever they get the premier offices, they will be going against, the corrupt mafias within the political setup of Pakistan. And of course, the most important thing for them is accountability. And sadly, I must say that they don't have the right number in the parliament, and that's why they keep on going towards the bills. And if we look at their slogans of the times when they were not in the premier offices of Pakistan, these were the slogans that they are still fighting for. By the way, I just wanted to say that there is one thing common between opposition and the government. Both are talking about, in their times when they were in the opposition, like the current government, they talked about accountability, and the current opposition, the PDM, it is talking about accountability once again, but they are talking against the accountability, whereas the current government, when it used to be in the opposition, they used to call for the accountability. So this is the I just wanted to show you the similarities between both of them. But I believe Prime Minister Imran Khan and his party, they have a mission. They came for the change, and they wanted a change, but of course they don't have the right number for legislation in the upper houses. So what they want to still do is that somehow they want to drag the system on. But if you talk to me about PDM, what their stance would be in the coming future, I don't see anything happening because we need to understand that we still have People's Party part of the PDM, and People's Party has clearly indicated that they would always be available for opposition as long as there is for the betterment or for facilitating the people of Pakistan.
Right.
But if there is something not suitable to them, then of course they won't be a part. We have seen in May this year the way they got out of the alliance, and then later on they said that we have not got out, but we have these reservations, and they just wanted them to be settled. But for a few months we didn't see any PDM activities, but suddenly we are seeing that from Karachi, Quetta and Lahore they'll be coming towards Peshawar and then Islamabad, and this is how their strategy is, and I think we still need to see that how it prolongs.
Right. So, Farooq, considering the history of the opposition alliances that we have seen,
Right.
Specifically with regards to PBP and PMLN, do we really have to anything to worry about, considering these bills or anything else at the strategy that is being devised by the opposition?
Right. We actually don't have to worry about anything. We are journalists, right? So we keep on studying everything. But regarding the parliament and the way things have actually unfolded, there are a couple of things that you need to bear in mind. On one side, on the face of it, it seems that the government of Pakistan is having a tough time in the parliament. Yesterday, two bills on a private member day, they got passed from the opposition. Regarding People's Party's expulsion from PDM, right now we are talking about an opposition which can be characterized as PDM plus. That is PDM, that is PMLN, JUIF and rest of the bunch, and then People's Party and ANP from the outside. Regarding their own capacity to stage any kind of upset for the government, remember there are two very important triggers that you have to look at. If you want to actually understand why they have not been able to work together in tandem and why they started fighting over morsels earlier in May, as was pointed out by Faisal, at that time what was happening was that both these parties have the internal problems.
Yeah.
PMLN has a problem that it cannot seem to unite behind one leader. May it be Shehbaz Sharif or may it be Maryam Nawaz. So that actually keeps on bringing down the PMLN. Regarding People's Party itself, it is a party that kept on bleeding a lot of support from Punjab, and this actually benefited PTI because PMLN's leadership has been intact more or less. It was Javed Hashmi went and came back, but apart from that, they didn't lose any notables. People's Party lost a lot of its lieutenants in Punjab to PTI. But what is happening at this moment with People's Party is, and it has been going on since 2013, it doesn't have a prime ministerial candidate. Yusuf Raza Gidlani was barred for 10 years. Now he is opposition leader in the Senate. But after that, Raja Pervez Ashraf came. Raja Pervez Ashraf also could not actually deliver. You know about that. After that, we haven't seen. Bilawal, of course, is now a parliamentarian, and you could argue that he could be the leader for, or the nominee for the prime ministership. But at this moment, his own party's leader, actual leader, that is Asif Ali Zardari, keeps on infantilizing him as if he is still a very young kid. So in that situation, People's Party's crisis is such that it doesn't have a prime ministerial candidate, and PMLN might have more than one, and they cannot work together in tandem. That is how PTI has survived in the government. And the trigger that I was talking about is not going to come from the central, federal parliament. It is going to be in Punjab. First we saw Balochistan, then there was the question of economy. The third trigger is going to be Punjab. If Punjab, its apple cart is toppled, then you would know that PMLN has finally decided to work out its differences, because then who comes into power? There are only two possibilities: either PMLN's Hamza Shehbaz, who is the opposition leader, or then the speaker, who is Pervez Elahi. I don't think PMLN is there yet. So at this moment, whatever you are hearing from the punditry, it is mere speculation and it is premature.
Right. Maruk, the opposition has also stated that there is no legal justification for the Prime Minister to be in his office anymore, considering what happened in the National Assembly. How valid is this statement? Can you give us any idea regarding what sort of legal justification are they pointing towards?
I don't think, I mean, political gimmickry or political lingo that is being thrown out by the PMLN from time to time, which happens, and all political parties do that. As far as the Prime Minister and his legitimacy is concerned, of course, I mean, they've been talking about selected, and they've been talking about stolen election and all of that, to which the government has then said, and the Prime Minister said today also, that I want to have the EVMs in place because I want to ensure that the next election is, proper, it's credible, and all of that. To which they again don't want to go down that route also. So there seems to be, a lot of the stuff that is happening at this time, as far as which is what Pitafi Saab is saying, and I agree with him. I think a lot of the things that are happening as far as the opposition is concerned at this time is, just political bravado, or political lingo being thrown at each other. A lot of things being said that they know will not happen. A lot of speeches being made just because they want to make those speeches. But what's missing, I think, for the opposition is not just the fact that there is a lack of leadership, or there's too much leadership, or there's which is what's happening, which is what Patafi Saab is saying, and I agree with him that those are factors. But other than that, there is a very important factor, I feel, which is disillusionment within the people. I think that the people are not interested. So there are issues as far as the government is concerned. The government has been trying to deal with issues like inflation, price hike, which are very legitimate issues for the everyday man, for the common man. But even so, even with all of that, the opposition is failing to find the kind of momentum they would need for there to be the kind of opposition the government can fare. Even if we talk about leaving the numbers aside, leaving what happens within the parliament aside, leaving the politics of it aside, what's really, really important is for the opposition, whether it's the PPP, the PMLN, the PDM jointly, to find that kind of momentum within the people. And they're not doing that. Somehow people don't seem to have, if they've lost faith in anybody else, they haven't gained it either.
Right.
That's what's missing. That link isn't there at this time.
Right, we're almost out of time. Faisal, a quick question from you. There are also questions being raised regarding problems from within the party as well, that PTI may not have its allies where I think it does. Is there any truth to that?
There is to some extent, but I believe if they, continuously see, Sana, it is all about informing the people. I mean, very recently we saw that people started marching towards Islamabad and how it was avoided by the government. I think the information factor that exists between the government and the people, it worked perfectly during that time, and same would be the case for this march as well. While they'll be coming towards, I agree with the Maruk that there are issues related to inflation and all of these, but I think right now, if a proactive approach is taken by the government to inform the people about the realities, about the truth, how price hikes have affected the whole world, and how things are moving on throughout the world due to the COVID situation, the post-COVID situation. So if government is can successfully do that, then I think government's allies, they would be standing with the government as well, because government will be able to grab on the ground. And of course, if the opposition parties, as we saw in the past, that to some extent they failed to grab on the numbers on the ground as well. So this time around, if government can achieve the proactive approach of informing the people, then it would not be possible for the opposition to grab presences on the ground. So
Right, okay.
One sentence, if you allow
Yes,
me.
Farooq.
Given that we all are people and we are also going through that same inflation, I just wanted to remind you, yes, there is economic distress, but the ability of opposition to capitalize on that isn't there. We haven't seen people coming out on the streets. Till that time they come out, you cannot say that it has taken a momentum. Right.
And we have measures being taken by the government as well, like the welfare package that is unprecedented, which has been announced. Yes, Maru.
Gee, I just want to say that this is exactly what I'm saying, what Patafi Saab is saying, that if there are issues, and there are, point is that and people, according to the opposition, people are really, really feeling it, then they're not being able to garner that to use as far as the opposition is concerned. They are not being able to use that support. The people don't want to support the opposition either. They don't think that tomorrow, if there is this government is not there, then whoever replaces them will necessarily do better. So therefore, there is that lack of faith, which is very, very important for the opposition if they want to capitalize on any of the of the problems or the disadvantages that this government may be facing.
Right, which of course even points to more of the fact that the people don't have the trust in any of the other political parties, considering that this is also a difficult situation for them. Thank you very much, Maruf, for being with us and joining us for this topic. We have to move on to the second one now, which of course is Kashmir and the situation that is evolving there, with the Indian troops increasing in ever-increasing amounts. 2,500 more have been deployed. 2,500 more are still expected to come. It is an already militarized zone, and more soldiers into the territory, of course, increase the number of sufferings that the people of Kashmir have been facing, and for how long they've been facing that. For this discussion, we've also been joined by Ali Raza Syed. He's the Chairman, Kashmir Council EU. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. And of course, Farooq and Faisal will also be shedding light on Kashmir. I personally am quite wary of the situation in Kashmir and the fact that this has been something that's been going on for decades. And whenever we talk about the situation in Kashmir, it seems to be becoming worse and worse. And even though a lot is being done in terms of this being this topic being raised on multiple fora, Pakistan has done well in that regard. The international community seems to be listening and developing an ear. It still does not seem enough for the people of Kashmir. It still seems that India can get away with almost anything. Farooq, am I wrong?
Yeah. You chose a great time. I was just beginning to cough.
I'm sorry, I can go to Faisal.
No. But let me start with this. Regarding what India has been doing in Kashmir, it is open story, right?
Yeah.
It is one of the most militarized zones where there used to be one soldier per every 11 persons, right? This doesn't happen in any democracy in the world. The fact is that democracy ends where Kashmir actually starts, right? India has been getting on with its occupation, and then it has been bringing about Hitler-esque, demographic shifts in Kashmir. They have been pushing their own kind of reforms down the Kashmiri throats. And this has been going on. I tell you, the kind of pictures we have seen, they talk a lot, the Western media talks a lot about China, but they haven't been able to show any pictures. And on the other side, you have pictures of a grandfather who is dead and upon whose chest a kid is sitting, right? And his grandson, a toddler, and nobody takes notice. At this moment also, India's program, particularly Narendra Modi's program, continues. They have been trying to bring about these changes. There will be pushback, but it will only come from the Kashmiris themselves. Regarding Narendra Modi's endgame, we know that he wants to bring in as many non-Muslims and non-Kashmiris inside, so that the Kashmiris become a minority in their own country, their own land. This seems to be happening right now, and that's why they're bringing in the forces to
Right. Faisal, what happened back in 2019 when the partial autonomy of Kashmir was revoked? This was something which was appalling, and there was a lot of hue and cry after that, and everybody was pointing towards the fact that India cannot take such a unilateral decision, and the rest. But the fact remains that it's almost 2.5 years later. That's still in place. The situation is worse. There is more military, more and more troops over there. Do you think that that is something which the world at large has just accepted? Is there no possibility of a consequence for that anymore? That's just the status quo.
Sana, when it comes to Kashmir, and when it comes to Pakistan, when it comes to Palestine, I don't know why the governments or the countries, the ones they call themselves as champions of democracy and human rights, I don't know why they keep their eyes shut on that. For several reasons. One of the reasons is that India is considered as a big market, and they want to do business with India. And one more thing, we are talking about the same Americans who happen to be, who claim to be one of the biggest democracy and human rights champions in the world, and they are the very Americans who actually give Sea Guardian Predator drones to India. Them Sea Guardian Predator drones, they get inducted along the LOC in Kashmir, and they keep on giving them. And if we talk about the tech procurement related to drones, which India is trying to have their own drones within indigenously having their own drones, the tech they are trying to get in, that too is coming from America and Israel. One more thing I wanted to highlight, that after the abrogation of 370 and 35A articles, it was clear that India is going on the route that was taken by Israel against Palestine. So it's a Palestine model which is implemented in Kashmir right now. And my worthy colleague Farooq rightly pointed out that it is the most militarized zone of the world, and world keeps a close eye on it. The only reason is that they have their own economic endeavors to look after, and they always will favor India, and they would always see India as a big market. And now the situation is more worse. Why? Because in a US-China trade war, they have turned India into a front line against China. So I don't think that in coming future, I mean, we as Pakistan and the Muslim world, they can carry on highlighting the issue of Kashmir and Palestine, but nobody would be listening us. The only reason behind it is that Israel and of course India, they are considered as big markets.
Right. We've also been joined by Ali Raza Sayed, Chairman, Kashmir Council, EU. Thank you for joining us on the debate. Welcome to the show. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much.
Right, considering the discussion earlier regarding Kashmir and the fact that this is something that's been going on for a while, many unilateral actions have been taken by India, much atrocities have been taking place, they've been highlighted at different fora. Pakistan also has been taking up this stance on different occasions, but the fact remains that this is something that's been going on for a while now. If you could lay it on the table for me, what sort of options do we have, or the Kashmiris have, in actually being able to achieve the outcome of their struggle at the end of the day? What are they? Considering, of course, you have a player on the table that refuses to listen or is acting its own way without any consequence or any fear of any consequence. And then, of course, the international community keeps on highlighting the issue at different fora. Is that all we have? Is that all we can do? Keep on highlighting it till the end of time, even though nothing really progresses?
Thank you for having me. I think there are a lot of ways how we can get our goal, which we want to achieve, the right to self-determination, and to stop the human rights violation. The main at this stage, I think, for the Kashmiris and for Pakistan is to stop what is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir. As you know, the India after the August 5, 2019, the Indian government is time to time they are increasing the military uh, personnel, the security personnel in Kashmir, and now just for some days back they already added uh, 55 new companies of CRPF. So it means they wanted to achieve it with the force, by force, but they failed up to now. And they are continuously, they are increasing the forces over there. But in my opinion, with the force, they cannot succeed to subdue the the Kashmiri population for their right to self-determination. They are struggling for last 70 years. But it's a time for the Kashmiris and for the Pakistan, the authorities who are dealing with it, that we have to find the ways how we can convince the international community. It's true that the Western world or the international community, they have the business interest, they have the economic interest with with India. It's a big market, but still there is a possibility to get the support of human rights, for human rights, from the Western world and from the international community. And I will say why we are not focusing on OIC. We heard a lot about OIC for last several decades, but what OIC has done, if we are asking to the Western world, they are asking us also that what OIC has done for Kashmir or for this situation. So we have to see why we cannot get the support from OIC. So it means that there are some the strategies we have to look into it, and we have to change our strategies, change our way of convincing the international community, and to highlighting the issue as a human issue. It's a human rights issue, and it's for the basic right of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And I think we can get the support from the Western world also.
So
If
change our strategy in what terms? Change our strategy to what?
I mean, it's a matter of 15 million human beings. It's not a bilateral issue. It's not a border
Sure.
dispute. It is a matter of 15 million human beings. So if we present it as a human issue, I think we can get the support. And the Kashmiri should be in front line, and it should be the Kashmiri who can plead their case in front of international community with the support of Pakistan, and then we can get the desired result, and we can move towards the peace and for the to get our rights.
Right. Farooq, aren't we already advocating and talking about this issue as a human rights issue and talking about the many, many atrocities that have been taking place in the occupied valley?
Right, we are, and earlier, Ali Saab was particularly talking about keeping the Kashmiris on the front line when it comes to advocacy. I totally agree with excellent advocates like his own good self. I think Kashmiris have really great people who can go out and talk. But I actually have to come back to what Faisal said, or your question. Faisal said that India has been turned into the front line against China. I think that in 2019, India itself turned itself into a front line by actually bifurcating unilaterally the state of Kashmir, and especially separating or altering the status quo in Ladakh. So that might have agitated China as well, and it has created a lot of dynamics. I don't think at this moment the West or the international community or democratic world wants India directly to be confronting one country and become their most allied ally. I think that in the past 20 years, India has played a very dirty game, and that was flogging the dead horse of so-called clash of civilizations, where it kept on playing Pakistan's internal problems against itself, and showing to the world that Pakistan is the radical Islamist state, and then of course the specter of communist China as well. And there it kept on actually increasing its power by embedding its people in international media, in political circuits all over the world. So what do you do now? How do you actually bring about the change that the world once again starts focusing on the miseries of Kashmiris and stops ignoring it, right?
Right.
From the tech world to the media to the politicians. What is important at this moment is that Narendra Modi is a godsend for Kashmiris and Pakistanis, because he puts off India's own diaspora at this moment. All the people who are in the West are so much entrenched that they want the luxuries of a liberal democracy given to them. So how can you actually advocate liberal democracy in the West and a pluralistic society when you are advocating exact opposite in Kashmir or in India? At that moment, one by one, you can reach out to all these elements and deconstruct Narendra Modi's power base, so that eventually the international media, that the lawmakers where lobbying goes on, and power corridors as well, and finally tech world elsewhere, you can actually convince the diaspora that what is happening in Kashmir, what is happening in India, they are not the right thing to do, and they will end up creating something which is far more terrible, because today you have technology, Hitler didn't have it, far more grotesque and villainous kind of monster that will actually eat up everything.
Right, but considering the fact that so many of what Modi regime has been doing both in Kashmir and then within India as well also seems to face no consequence. Is the fact that the actions that have been taking place by the Modi's regime, Faisal, do you think that they're actually creating some sort of a ripple? They are affecting the way the international community views India, that perhaps if they overdo it at some point, some years later, it will have a positive impact on the Kashmiri freedom struggle. Is that so? Because at the moment, I feel that India is still doing whatever it wants to do.
Sarah, my colleague Farooq, he has put it fantastically when he talked about how in recent times India has been investing on lobbies, investing in IT sectors or international IT sectors, and how India successfully brought the Americans closer in terms of tech sharing, in terms of IT placements for them within the IT sector of Americans. So they have, and media as well, they have created their influence in the Western world as well. And mind you, wherever the Premier Modi goes, Of course, he has something there for him in terms of his diplomatic missions, his lobbies. They work out really well for them, and they have quite a few number of people within the Western setup, within the American setup. They have literally bought them to be the mouthpiece of the Indians, and they have successfully done that. But at the same time, we have very sane voices within the Western atmosphere, from where from EU we have been constantly seeing that there were letters which were written to India to shun these practices. The racist practices, and there were quite a few letters from Canadian side as well, and the Americans and the Australians. So the world has been doing what is required, but at the same time, the lobbies of India are so strong that they they can successfully dry it down for themselves. And the biggest problem is that India, they keep on saying that India is the biggest democracy of the world, and they claim that, but on what basis it is the biggest democracy? I think world needs to understand that as well. And I just wanted to mention a very interesting thing that earlier we were talking about, and one of your questions to our guest today was that should we keep on waiting till the end of the times? The very fact that is happening on LAC, I think we need to give importance to that as well. From China and from Indian side, both of the sides, they are building it up. We shouldn't be forgetting a fact that earlier this year, or end of the last year, it was decided by the Indian Army to send their reserve troops of one corps, which happens to be their strike corps. They sent it to Galwan Valley, they sent it to Eastern Ladakh just to cover up. Why? Because they hadn't had the right number in there. So two of the infantries, they were sent in there, and then one artillery was sent in. But before going there, of course they had to go through acclimatization, and of course they had to use the different different arms. So what I'm trying to say is that build-up is there. And if we talk about Lieutenant General Manoj Pandey of the Eastern Command, the commander of the Eastern Command, he's very important man. Why? Because in April next year, he's going to be the next Army Chief of India, and he is the one who is highlighting this, that on the Chinese side, the build-up is of that magnitude that India has to move along with that. They have to take the numbers to there. And by the way, there is another fact that India is extensively employing the female soldiers in their army. People might say, oh, that's an excellent step forward. But I tell you, right now, India is facing a dilemma, a problem, that people are not coming forward to get inducted in the armed forces. So that's why they have introduced the female armed wings.
Right.
And they are going to be used inside Srinagar and inside the bigger cities of
Right. Faisal,
Kashmir.
we're short on time.
Yeah.
I'll just like to take a few comments from Mr. Ali as well. Mr. Ali, considering in light of the increase of troops in the occupied territory and of course demographic changes in the past, do you think there's any possibility of any further division in the territory?
I think Modi, he has his desire to uh, to divide more the society, also the Kashmiri people also. You have seen in last 3 4 weeks there were some killings of minorities, some Muslims also, but it was just to create the environment. Then they can bring more troops and they can stop the whatever the Kashmiri wants to get their Tariq. But one thing I want to add is that in Europe, I have seen the European in European institutions, in European Parliament, that the Modi government, what they are doing with the citizen of India and what they are doing in Kashmir, it is not popular. Wherever you go in European institutions, or you meet the people, they are not happy with the decisions and what the line Modi is taking, because it was called biggest democracy, but the Europeans, they are not accepting. I mean, they are not happy. But I think this is the moment that we can convince the Europeans. I will talk just about the European Union, because that's the moment the Indian rules what they are doing with the minorities, with the Christian, with the Sikhs, and with the Buddhists, with Muslims. European
Right,
Parliament
thank
has
you.
passed a
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali, for those words. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. Farooq, I hope you didn't think that I was going to end the show without getting your last words
Yeah,
in. So tell me
Please, if
something,
I-
say
if I
what you want,
can.
but also tell me something that, considering the fact that there are UN Security Council resolutions in place regarding Kashmir, are these just documents for reference and discussions and nothing more?
They are basically what they are. They are pieces of text. They can be used as politically as you want to, but if you don't have the power behind them, they are not going to mean anything, right? This is what happens in politics. Earlier, Faisal was talking about kinetic aspects, right? I just wanted to bring to your attention that while there are elements of kinetic forces and distribution and fight, with due respect, in this fight, you'll have to use all cultural, economic, and then, of course, political power, and that will take time. But if you have the right strategy, we can win, Kashmiris can win.
Right,
Exactly.
Faisal, your last comment.
One last thing, I just wanted to say that balkanization of India, that seems to be, a best suitable option right now. And in coming future, the way India is moving on, I'm pretty much sure today's Modi and today's Modia, it would be an excellent source of bringing that balkanization on the corner. Thank you.
Yes, and of course the fact remains that our utmost priority are the Kashmiris, and they are suffering every single day. We also have a counter here in Islamabad that keeps reminding us of the fact that the Kashmiris are struggling, and it goes way before that as well. Many decades have passed, many generations have suffered, and what we all want is peace and stability and well-being, and of course freedom for the Kashmiris. And this is what Pakistan will continue to strive for, whatever it takes. Thank you very much for joining the debate. Take care.